Located on the northeast of Africa, stands one of the oldest civilizations known to man, Egypt, a land where the stories of Moses, as told in the Quran and the Bible, come alive. Stories believed to have unfolded between the 14th and 12th century BCE. By then, iconic pyramids of Giza were already ancient wonders, standing for over 1,000 years. But what about the structure that were contemporary to Moses' time? The buildings that to the people of his era were as awe-inspiring and modern as the Burj Khalifa is to our eyes.
When the Prophet Moses was born, the Israelites were held as slaves in Egypt, and the Pharaoh had decreed that all newborn Israelite males were to be put to death. His mother trusted God to keep him safe, so she put him in a basket and let it drift on the Nile River.
وأوحينا إلى أم موسى أن أرضعيه فإذا خفت عليه فألقيه في اليم ولا تخافي ولا تحزني إنا رادوه إليك وجاعلوه من المرسلين.
Asia, Pharaoh's wife, discovered the basket and persuaded her husband to spare and adopt the infant. Moses didn't realize that he actually grew up in the palace of the Pharaoh. So, after years of living as a shepherd in Midian, Moses got his prophecy near Mount Sinai when he came across a burning bush. It was there he received a calling from God to return to Egypt and free the Israelites from Pharaoh's oppression. At first, Moses doubted himself, but God reassured him with miracles, like turning his staff into a snake, and even sent his brother Aaron to support him. When they confronted Pharaoh, their message was not only mocked, but also dismissed. Despite several plagues, like drought, floodings, darkness, locusts, lice, and even the Nile turning to blood, Pharaoh refused to let the Israelites go.
وَلَقَدْ أَخَذْنَا آلَ فِرْعَوْنَ بِالسِّنِينَ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الثَّمَرَاتِ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَذَّكَّرُونَ.
Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand towards the sky so that darkness spreads over Egypt, darkness that can be felt." So Moses stretched out his hand towards the sky, and total darkness covered all Egypt for 3 days. No one could see anyone else or move about for 3 days. Yet all the Israelites had light in the place where they lived. Book of Exodus 10:21-23.
Moses was given instruction by God to get the Israelites ready to flee Egypt. Then the Israelites were safe that night, and the Pharaoh let them leave. Pharaoh has decided to follow the Israelites when Moses led them towards the Red Sea. In the midst of the panic, Moses prayed while he was trapped, and God opened the water. When Pharaoh's army followed, the waters returned and drowning them, and it gave the opportunity to Israelites to cross safely.
وجاوزنا ببني إسرائيل البحر فأتبعهم فرعون وجنوده بغيا وعدوا حتى إذا أدركه الغرق قال آمنت أنه لا إله إلا الذي آمنت به بنو إسرائيل وأنا من المسلمين الآن وقد عصيت قبل وكنت من المفسدين.
To uncover the connection between Egyptian architecture and the story of Prophet Moses, we must unlock the greatest mystery of all. Who was Pharaoh? Because with his identity, we can trace the era, the monuments, and the very heartbeat of the empire.
There are actually many opinions that have split over this matter, and thankfully, candidates have been suggested. These considerations are then assessed with regards to their harmony with the Quranic narration.
Firstly is Thutmose II. So he ascended to power in time of prosperity, reigned for a total of 14 years from 1493 to 1479 BCE. In the reign of Thutmose II, the conditions seem in harmony with the prophet Moses, namely, a brief prosperous reign, then a sudden collapse with no son to succeed. It has also been said that his body was fished out of the sea and mummified, and the pharaoh also suffered cysts, which were part of the plague of boils which Egypt had suffered at the time of Moses.
Critics argue that his reign was simply too short. The timeline of Moses' story, his rise, exile, return, and the Exodus, would have required decades to unfold, not merely 14 years. Was Thutmose II truly the pharaoh of Moses, or does the answer lie elsewhere, buried deeper in the sand of time?
And then there's Meneptah and Amenhotep II. But most Egyptologists believe it's actually Ramesses II, as the evidence that support Ramesses II being the pharaoh in power during the time of Moses is more comprehensive than the other three pharaohs, and is more actually most in harmony with the Quranic narration. The Quranic narration of the story of Moses from the time of his birth until Exodus suggests that the same pharaoh was in power throughout that period. Out of all the many pharaohs considered in this discussion, only the reign of Ramesses II, which is 67 years, would have been long enough to cover the years from the birth of Moses until Exodus.
فالتقطه آل فرعون ليكون لهم عدوا وحزنا إن فرعون وهامان وجنودهما كانوا خاطئين وقالت امرأة فرعون قرة عين لي ولك لا تقتلوه عسى أن ينفعنا أو نتخذه ولدا وهم لا يشعرون.
That ayat really solidifies the fact that there's indeed only one pharaoh during the time of Moses, as it mentioned that it's the same family that picked him up and he'll be the source of grief for them. If we ignore the Quran or Bible, Ramesses II, known as Ramesses the Great, was actually one of Egypt's greatest pharaohs, renowned for his long-range military triumph, diplomacy, and most importantly, with our topic right now, monumental building projects.
وقال فرعون يا هامان ابن لي صرحا لعلي أبلغ الأسباب أسباب السماوات فأطلع إلى إله موسى وإني لأظنه كاذبا وكذلك زين لفرعون سوء عمله وصد عن السبيل وما كيد فرعون إلا في تباب.
When discussing Rameses, Abu's simple temple is a must. Built during his reign, it was carved directly into the sandstone cliff on the Nile's west bank. Its four colossal statues of Rameses, each towering 66 feet, are masterpieces of ancient Egyptian art. The great temple is aligned so that twice a year, sunlight illuminates the inner sanctuary, a precise feat of astronomical and architectural mastery. Although it's dedicated to the sun gods Amon-Ra and Ra-Horekti, the temple prominently glorifies Rameses. Outright statues of him and depictions of his strength, time, and battle of Kadesh dominate the imagery. At the feet of the colossal statues, smaller carvings of giants like Re-Horekta emphasizes Rameses' self-image as a god above gods. Abu's symbol is a powerful testament to his ego, authority, and quest for immortality. It doesn't end there. In the city of Lecture, Upper Egypt, there once stood an ancient Egyptian city named Thebes. The southern part of the Thebes was built around a magnificent temple dedicated to Amon, king of the gods, commissioned by King Amenhotep III around 1400 BCE. Today, this temple is known as the Temple of Lecture. The relationship the temple has with Rameses is that he later enlarged the temple and built a monumental gate with scenes of his chariots. There is two giant obelisks in front of it with carvings of Rameses and 6 large statues of himself. The first courtyard of Lecture is adorned with numerous statues of Rameses. Interestingly, 2 statues originally dedicated to Tutankhamun were altered to bear Rameses, named emphasizing his desire for legacy. The pedestals of these statues depict scenes of Egyptians triumphing over their foes, especially the Assyrians. Amidst the self-glorification, Rameses constructed a sacred sanctuary dedicated to his god, Amon, blending his divine aspiration with religious devotion. The temple is built completely using Nubian sandstone and originally painted in bright colors. To compare ancient Egypt architecture with others, I'll say it's more on the materials used. Due to their respective locations, they all use different building bricks to build. Egypt uses sandstones and limestones. Mesopotamians use mud bricks to build their ziggurats, while Indus also use mud bricks but they burn it first.
As Islam spreads into Egypt, a mosque was built around the location. It's pretty common for mosques to be built over older, pre-Islamic structure, often reusing the material or location of ancient temples. This was both practical and symbolic, signifying a new era. But this was not the case here, as the mosque was built when the temple was yet to uncover itself from the sand.
When the site was excavated, removing the sand revealed the temple's original ground level, leaving the mosque doorway 23 feet above the exposed floor. Despite this, the mosque remains a functioning space for prayer and religious events, symbolizing the enduring faith of Muslims.
time of Moses.
Walaupun aku tak suka accent tu, tapi tak apa.
No.
What's with the accent, bro? Syazwan Sati.
Yes, sir.